Welcome Planeswalkers to the CollectorMania YouTube channel. My name is Eric Ward and we're going to do a brew preview for Hallar the Fire Fletcher. If you haven't seen Hallar, it's a 1 red and green 3/3 elf warrior with trample. Whenever you cast a spell, if that spell was kicked, put a +1/+1 counter on Hallar and then deal damage equal to the number of +1/+1 counters to each opponent. The idea of this deck here that I've kind of put together, we're trying to get as many counters as we can and then really just cast any kicker spell that we can to deal some damage. So breaking into things, our first spell, Harden Scales. Of course, if one or more counters are placed on a creature you control, place that many +1. So if you cast a spell and it was kicked, you put 2 counters in this case. So that could be really good and then deal 2 damage to all opponents. The idea is that'll just overwhelm people, eventually dealing 2, then 4, then 6, and then that will add up very, very quickly. Next, we've got Forgotten Ancient, of course. When a player casts a spell, you may put a +1/+1 counter on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may move any number of +1/+1 counters to another creature. So, just build up some counters on this guy and eventually throw them onto Hallar and then cast a kicker spell. In between turns, he could get 3 or 4 counters on him, and then you can kind of go to town. Next, we've got Colognian Hydra here. Of course, really good for adding counters on himself, and then when he attacks, you double the number of counters on each creature you control. So that would be really good, even with just a few. Now we've got double a few on Hallar. Next, we have Doubling Season, of course. Anytime you're adding counters or tokens, this would be a great one to use. You just double them, essentially. So you would get 1 for your first spell, very similar to the Harden Scales, but of course that can work with the Harden Scales and just go bananas. Here we got New Horizons, just a curious aura. When it enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, and a little bit of ramp. Kind of cutesy, I guess, but if you're completely out of kicker spells, you can at least kind of load Hallar up there. Next, Oran Reef, the Vastwood, of course, comes in tapped, which isn't ideal, but you can put a +1/+1 counter on each green creature that enters the battlefield this turn. So late game, if you need to replay your commander or something, keep this one up, play Hallar, tap it at a token right off the bat. Next, Vastwood Hydra. Kind of similar here, just the Hydra theme with the X, but when he dies, you can put those tokens onto other creatures you control. So just kind of beef him up, maybe swing with the Colognian Hydra, start doubling counters, that sort of thing. This guy dies, you move into Hallar, now play a kicker spell, and you might deal like 6 or 8 or whatever to all opponents. Vigor, of course, really good. Damage is prevented on all the creatures except Vigor, and they are put in as +1/+1 counters, so that could be just insane with Hallar. Solidarity of Heroes I thought was pretty interesting. Choose any number of target creatures, double the number of +1 counters on each of them. So you could play it and then kick something small or like inconsequential and then just deal like 6 or 8 damage to everybody on the board. Next, Verdun Confluence. If you don't have the Confluence cycles, they are really valuable. And if you look here at the first mode, put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature. You can do that up to 3 times. So imagine for 6 mana, 6 counters, then play like a whatever kicker spell and deal 6 to each opponent. Really strong. And of course, it's got some other modes as well if you need to, fix some land or, return some stuff from graveyard. Really great card. Next, Increasing Savagery. Put 5 counters from when it's played from hand and put 10 when it's from the graveyard. So if you've got a ton of mana, you can get a whole bunch of counters and then just kick anything and kill a whole bunch of people. Next, Contagion Engine, of course, just for some proliferate and then proliferate again. Kind of interesting. Not too bad there. Death's Presence, very similar to the Vastwood Hydra. Whenever something dies, you can put +1/+1 counters on target creature equal to that dying creature's power. So you lose something, even like an acidic slime or something. Now Hallar's got 2 counters on him if Death's Presence is in play. After that, Land of War Reborn, another tapped land, but it's got Graft, so you could play it early, and then whenever a creature comes into play, you may remove the +1/+1 counter and put it on it. So just make Hallar a 4/4, get him ready for a kicker, and then start building the chain there. Of course, Opel Palace. You can tap to add mana of any color to your commander's color identity. If you spend it on him, you get an additional +1/+1 counter equal to the number of times it's been cast from the command zone. So Hallar's probably going to be drawing some hate, especially if you're starting to hit everybody for 5 or 6 or whatever. If he's died a few times, you can start him out with a couple extra counters from command zone. So really kind of underutilized card that really could work well here. And that's pretty much it. If you guys have any suggestions or whatever cards that you think may have or should have made the list, let us know. And of course, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and stay tuned for more brew previews.